Time's a wasting. Good morning, everyone. It's August 11th, 2025. This is a special edition of AMCC's weekly national call that's been happening for about a decade. At the same time, every Monday, 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central, 9:30 Mountain, 8:30 Pacific time. I'm Matt Bogosian, Executive Director of AMCC, the nation's manufacturing community of practice. That's David Van Sicklen, our Operations Director. And like David said, this is a special edition of our weekly call because today we're partnering with our friends at NIST to help them solicit official feedback for what the feds are calling an RFI. That's a request for information. And they're going to be putting together a new national strategy for advanced manufacturing. And they want our input, your input, all of our input. And they want it by September 30th. Before they go off and huddle up with a bunch of federal agencies and produce the national strategy. So how do we give input to the feds? Many ways. The formal written way is through the federal government portal. David can drop that into the chat too. They're also doing informal sessions like they did last week at the Manufacturing Momentum Summit that some of you were at with us in Detroit. AMCC, we intend to submit our suggestions when we get closer to the September 30th deadline. And if you got your AMCC update on Friday, the newsletter that we send out across the country every Friday, you can see some of our early draft suggestions that we're thinking about. Hoping they also spur your thinking so we can produce the kind of big ideas we need to move the needle. Super important to know that you can give, comments, any kind of input really to all 12 of their multi-part questions or just piecemeal in response to only questions. Your call is pretty wide open. So as to today's call, on a normal week, we spend 30 minutes together in a roundtable discussion with public, private, nonprofit stakeholders, or we have a short presentation from one of you about best practices. So we're going to kind of stick to the 30-minute format. And if that's all the time you have to be a part of this call, that's great. But in addition, because it's a big topic and lots got to go into a new national strategy for advanced manufacturing. After the first 30 minutes, we're just going to keep going for another hour if we have to. So that's basically, what's happening here. Thanks for being on. And of course, because we can't get to all of these priority questions, we pulled out a few for the first 30 minutes to talk about directly. Specifically questions 7, 11, and 4. But the format, we'll turn it over here to NIST to give a little bit more. But, please raise your hand and I'll call on you if necessary. We can do our normal Monday Socratic style too. But I want to make sure that I address one thing up front, and that is our candor. You can either give your name and organization or not. You can say this is your personal opinion or qualify your take however it makes sense. The most important point is to bring your best take based on your experience. You've been involved in the AMCC. You've got a lot of experience in regions as manufacturers or the part of the manufacturing ecosystem of support. So please be candid about your input. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Robert Rudnitsky, Division Chief for Strategy and Planning at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office. He'll give you his quick take, and then we'll turn to the Slido format. We're lucky we have Aaron Rushing, who is at the Manufacturing Momentum Summit in DC, NACO in December. We also have Saeed Jahanwar, Assistant Director for Federal Partnership from NIST on here. So Robert, let me kick it to you.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much. Actually, thank you both to Matt and to David for inviting us to this. Well, it's a special AMCC weekly meeting and also a special town hall meeting for us about the Advanced National Strategic Plan for Advanced Manufacturing. We're doing a number of these town hall meetings with different groups. Today's meeting is special. It's reserved just for members of the AMCC, and we're looking forward to your input. Matt covered a lot of this, but I'll go very briefly through what this is about. Next slide, please. So basically, under law, the administration, through the National Science and Technology Council, is required to develop a strategic plan for advanced manufacturing every 4 years. Statute also requires that we reach out and collect from stakeholders their input. We do that through a request for information, and I'll provide the link for that in a few minutes. But we also do it through sessions like this, listening sessions. We held 14 of them for the last plan, and we expect to hold more than that for this plan. Next slide, please. Our current goal has the vision statement that you see and 3 national goals: to develop and implement advanced manufacturing technologies, to grow the manufacturing workforce, and to build resilience into manufacturing supply chains and ecosystems. Each of those goals has a number of objectives and national priorities. Next slide. We start with doing the outreach, and then, as Matt said, in the fall, we break up into writing teams consisting of people from the involved federal agencies. And then our goal is to complete this work and publish the strategic plan next year. Next slide, please. For a link to the request for information, please see the link above. You can also Google National Strategic Plan for Advanced Manufacturing RFI, or I believe that Kimai has added it to the chat. I'm not seeing the chat now, but I think I saw something flash up. And responses are due by September 30th, although we may extend the date beyond that. There are 12 questions. You don't need to respond to all of the questions, just respond to the ones that are important to you. The input is collected on regulations.gov website. That's just a collections tool. This is not a regulatory exercise. So I'll just flag that for you. You can also upload files, either as PDFs or Word files. And I can tell you that your inputs will be studied and reviewed. You can put your inputs in anonymously or identify your organization. The input carries more weight typically if it represents a company, university, or other organization. The RFI does ask that you do not include any confidential or proprietary information. It also says that submissions may be made public. That is true. At the moment, we're not planning to publish submissions, but they may be made public in the future. You're also, next slide, please. You're also responding to this town hall, responding to this RFI through participation in this town hall. And so at this point, I'll ask you to join the Slido site. And again, I'm not sure if there's a link. There's a link to it in the chat. And or you can use the QR code that's on the screen, or you can go to slido.com and look for hashtag MFG Strategy 5. We're going to be taking inputs 2 ways in this. One is we're going to be just talking through some of the questions. And then the second is you can put in your answers in Slido, and those answers will appear as text to everybody who's participating on this call. With that, next slide, please. Once you've accessed Slido, you'll find the questions on the polls tab. Right now, we're focusing just on a few priority questions that Matt and David have identified, but you're welcome and encouraged to respond to any and all of them. Key thing, though, is when you add your question, you must scroll down and hit the send button. It doesn't go in until you hit the send button. And again, while we encourage you to identify what institution you're representing, you can also choose to do it anonymously. And last thing I'll say is that we After this session is done, we're going to keep this Slido poll open for 1 week, so you can continue to submit answers through Slido for another week. And as I said, you can also submit your answers to the questions through the RFI itself. And with that, Erin, let's switch over to Slido. And we're going to start with question 7A. And the question is, in what ways can the federal government assist in the development of advanced manufacturing clusters and technology hubs nationwide beyond funding needs?
So you all have a lot of experience in this zone. And so there's two ways to give input, right, Robert? They can come off mute, or raise their hand, come off mute, and just tell us, right? Or they can put it directly into the Slido.
Exactly.
So, okay, thank you. So let's get the ball rolling. How about to that question? Beyond funding is helpful, right? But how can the federal government assist? Let me turn to anybody raising their hand on that. I'll turn to Andy Stetner at the Century Foundation. Andy, what's your take on that question?
I was just going to type in the box, so really good. But I took the typing thing. So yeah, I mean, I think hi, this is Andy Stetner with the Century Foundation. I think one thing is creating alignment between the different federal agencies that support manufacturing, both in their goals, metrics, and collaboration. For example, in the area of workforce, we have multiple agencies now supporting the advanced manufacturing workforce, but they may be asking, for different things. So having that greater alignment and strategy around workforce across agencies, is one thing that kind of jumps immediately to mind.
Thank you. Robert Baker.
Hey, thank you for that. So this is a follow-on comment. One thing that would be extremely helpful to those of us working in advanced manufacturing is, as soon as the administration decides on an investment strategy for AI, they've promised that. We now have the initial guidance, and they've promised the investment strategy. We need to have an investment strategy that specifically addresses advanced manufacturing, including workforce training, the upskilling on one hand, and then also with respect to the integration of AI into workflow processes in the production line.
Thanks, Robert. And I'm gonna not name your organization in case you don't want to share it or whatever.
Center for Manufacturing.
Yeah, he's down in Virginia and the Maritime. There's a Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program down there that he and others are.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Jim Lochner.
Yes, hello everyone. I manage a manufacturing alliance in southeastern Pennsylvania. I have about 450 manufacturers, and my suggestion is to, and I just put it in the Slido there, but the Navy has been doing a great job in terms of trying to train and have companies come and collaborate their recruiting and hiring processes and best practice, and also rolls into retention. They're helping different manufacturers hire 135,000 additional people. I think we need to expand that to all the sectors of manufacturing, not just the we build submarines. It's been a huge campaign. And I know the Navy shipyard locally has a number of people from foreign countries, Turkey and others, that have shipbuilding experience, because we have very few Americans with that experience. So I think we need to fix our immigration process to allow more of that to happen, since we don't have enough people, literally don't have enough bodies to fill all the jobs. Last count I saw were over 7 million open jobs and only 3 million people looking for work.
Thank you, Jim. Larry Rothman.
Yeah, good morning. Our focus is on workforce development, specifically for neurodiverse people. I think they're a source of untapped skill sets for this particular thing. I think that we need some specific development. We have created what's called a workforce development ecosystem, which we're happy to share. I believe we need to do some specific upskilling and training and have focus on the neurodiverse workforce, which numbers close to 15 to 20% of the incoming workforce.
Thank you, Larry. Now, you guys see this question. It's a big question. There's a lot of good input coming in. And unless somebody raises their hand, I'm just going to keep moving on because we got a lot of ground to cover. You can always come back to it. You've got the other access. You can do a formal. It was great to hear, Robert, that you guys are going to keep this thing open for a week. I didn't know that. So that's very cool. And then, of course, there's the formal, just input process too. So you can do that. Melissa McGregor, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Matt. Thanks. I would say that the federal government could figure out a way to incentivize employers to participate in signaling to educators the types of skills that they'll be hiring for. That feedback loop currently doesn't necessarily exist except in small pockets. And I don't think that employers have, on a national basis, been incentivized to participate in things like work-based learning, registered apprenticeships. It's really voluntary, and without knowing the skills and having that feedback in terms of supply demand, right? If the supply of the talent isn't asking for reviews of their product, then we're not going to know, and educators won't know whether or not they need to adjust for the things that employers will hire for. So some type of incentive.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Yeah, there's so much in. I mean, each one of these questions have these sub questions. I mean, it's a packed list. We on this one in our draft suggestions that we sent out in the AMCC update. I wanted to return to Andy Stetner's comment about getting the federal agencies. We need some kind of forcing function that gets the federal agencies to be working together on the ground with regionally led somehow. And I think. That comes across from so many stakeholders across the board. Let me turn to the second one that this group knows a lot about also, which is question B there. Is there a need for new or expanded advanced manufacturing clusters or tech hubs for the competitiveness of U.S. manufacturers, and if so, in what sectors or technologies? So Mike, please, in Florida.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, there's been a lot of effort on, well, a lot of interest in advanced manufacturing for aerospace and defense, but there's a number of different sort of cross-cutting technologies, including in maintenance repair, including in propulsion, that I think have been underinvested as a sort of underlying productive capacity. And then obviously we have some major ones that are being significantly invested in right now in the maritime industrial base, but there are some other areas in the industrial base that I think need similar types of investment and focus that the maritime industrial base is getting now.
Thanks, Mike. Dan Radomski.
How's everybody doing? Dan Radomski. I run a manufacturing technology incubator, including North America's only Industry 4.0 accelerator. And I brought this up at the Manufacturing Momentum Summit here in Detroit. But a lot of times we get caught up in what is needed on the manufacturing floor to support workers as we go through this transformation, especially Industry 4.0, AI's use in everything, right? From AI connected worker platforms to AI inspection technologies, AI machine optimization, supply chain optimization. What we fail to recognize is that a lot of the new job creation is going to be on the solution providers that are bringing these Industry 4.0 and AI manufacturing solutions into the production environment. And it's those that are very high paying jobs and ultimately are going to be critical to introduce the design and development, installation, maintenance of these Industry 4.0 solutions in the manufacturing plants. And those jobs are in need of machine learning, AI integration, and advanced robotics. And I think it's really important that that NIST consider that there is a real need for understanding what those high-tech jobs look like, and how do we prepare to train and develop clusters of innovative companies that provide those solutions into the manufacturing plants themselves.
Thanks, Dan. So when you read this question, right, it's set up kind of almost as like a competition or a contest. Like, what's the better way to go, you guys? Is it? I mean, we put in our draft response that we should be focused on producing priority products, and so that it should be on particular products. These clusters should be around producing particular products or kind of generic technology hubs. That's the way this question, at least to my eyes, is set up. Does anyone have a take on, if you had to choose one or the other, which route would you go? Would you have the federal government incentivizing kind of sector-specific hubs or generic, technology hubs? I don't know if that's fair to you guys at NIST or whatever, but at least that's the way I'm reading it. And I think, folks on this call might have a take on that.
So I can weigh in on that, Matt.
Please, Kevin Ross. Yeah.
Eccentric Consulting, maybe more of a personal opinion, but I do think that industry focus is really important. Manufacturing is such a broad topic, and it's in so many different industry subgroups. It really helps if you can align around specific capabilities. One example of that of course, would be gigafactories for EV factories and batteries. They have their own specific needs and capabilities that are required. You could also focus around server manufacturing for all the data centers that are being manufactured. It helps to concentrate, I think, not only financial and physical resources, but also talent and skills, because they're going to be, I think, focused in building skills and capabilities in specific industry and topic and technology areas.
Thanks, Kevin. Melissa, I saw your hand up.
I think Kevin really kind of covered it, but I do think that it would be important because important to set these up as verticals, as you always talk about, Matt, because the semiconductors right now and also batteries and AI, all of it is really sucking the air out of the room. And the traditional manufacturers and food manufacturers and, the small and medium-sized businesses who are manufacturing goods that we still continue to need in this country still need talent. And so separating those two out, could be a beneficial strategy. I'm not really sure that that's necessarily the answer, but I'm in favor of it, of the separation.
I think it's a good comment about those newer technologies sucking all the air out of the room, because most of it's most people don't realize that a lot of it's in small and medium businesses, right? Like 80-90% are small and medium businesses, but they don't get the attention, right? And they do need maybe different set of skills, right? But we can't leave them behind either. So it's a good comment, Melissa.
Yeah, that's great. Daniel Weirman.
Hey, everybody. Danny Weirman, CNC Career Network. I'm going to agree with Kevin. I think separating is definitely key, especially when you move into different regions that are already separated or in pockets of technology or pockets of industry. And I think it would make it a lot easier for the career seekers to understand what they're getting involved with too. So if you move it very specific, then you have a specific set of skills. And if you motivate that from the federal government side, then specific dollars come in to train people in those skills. Everyone, it makes a lot more sense. The broader you go, I think the more confusing it is for all regional partners, and the more focused you can be, the more it makes sense to a mom and dad that want their kid to go into a good career and everything else. And that will all just trickle down as the funding trickles down through all the different regional partners. Eventually the message will get to the general public, and you want it to be specific.
Marcia Wisely and then John Zappa.
Yeah, so not to parrot, but I would say like the only maybe addendum or asterisk I would put on the comments that have already been made is that it would be helpful to just target both the manufacturing sector, but have a piece targeted at technology. So as like a startup business in this space and coming from corporate engineering, like I am uncovering a lot about small and medium manufacturing from calls like this and getting more involved in the community. And so having funding that's targeted at technology that supports these kind of niche verticals would help make sure that, like, you know, I think about pharmaceuticals and validation or some of the other specific needs of those industries. It would help make sure that technology supports those niche kind of areas that need a different kind of support. And it doesn't really pull away, I don't think, from the overall manufacturing space. It just adds features that are required.
Awesome, Marcia. Thank you for that. John, before I turn to you, just we got 2 minutes left for those that only have the 30 minutes on the national call. Please, this will be open for a week. Thanks to NIST. Please give your comments there or through the normal, you know, federal government RFI input, you know, proposal, or talk to us, talk to David and I, you know, about what we put out there as draft ideas, and look forward to you guys influencing what we actually finalize as the AMCC comments. We're just going to keep rolling, guys. So thanks for staying on. Thanks for your patience, John. Your comment. Yeah.
No worries. John Zappa with the Arm Institute. I can only speak for the robotic segment of advanced manufacturing, but just to kind of piggyback on what's been said, you know, last time I checked, only 8% of U.S. manufacturers had implemented robotics, and for a lot of small, medium-sized manufacturers, the real know-how of how to do this is crucial, right? Which was another speaker to mention that, and they're not going to hire a robotics integrator to go do that. So, you know, we've even been seen in Western Pennsylvania, a federally funded initiative where we can provide that expertise to local manufacturers. They can come in, get their processes reviewed. We'll build a prototype, and if they want to go ahead and commercialize that, then we connect them to a systems integrator. But that hand holding and a know-how to close the gap for folks, and this is just in our, you know, domain, but I suspect this is true in a lot of advanced manufacturing domains, is for these smaller companies, how to even grasp and utilize what's out there for them. So just want to put in a plug for the specialized side of it as well too.
Yeah, John, super important. I mean, 8%, boy, that is low. And you know, super small numbers, even digitized, you know, to have the potential to do robotics. So thank you for that comment. And the 7C comment is really similar insofar as, you know, how do we prioritize industry specific clusters or instead focus on tech hubs? So we're getting a little bit of both, I would say, so far. But that's we're not looking for a consensus. We're looking for your best take, folks. And the challenge, you know, is to get regions focused on collaborating from all the different ecosystem of support stakeholders. But let's keep this question up. So, should federal incentives prioritize, you know, advanced manufacturing, industry specific, we call them manufacturing verticals, or tech hubs center critical components and materials, and if so, why? So let me, we were kind of covering that in the previous convo, but other thoughts? Anybody have other thoughts on this one?
I'm having a little hard time understanding the question, Matt. Can maybe our colleagues kind of
please, yeah, Robert,
differentiate these two?
Sure. So so basically it breaks down to, if you're going to have a hub, what way should you focus it? So do you focus, I'm repeating the question to some extent here, but do you focus it on a specific technology? Do you focus it on critical tech components, meaning components that might be useful across many technologies? Or do you focus it on materials? So yeah, so a specific technology might be artificial intelligence. A critical component might be, you know, power inverters that are used to as part of the power function for it. And materials might be some material that's used to make either the hardware or of either of those devices. So if you're designing a hub, and that's within one technology, but an inverter, to draw out the point, would be something that you could use across many technologies, right? Everything from cars, air conditioning, et cetera, and materials are even broader than that. So it's really what's the best way to organize a technology hub or manufacturing cluster if you're already doing something industry specific.
Mike?
Yeah, I would say in part that the answer here is it depends. It depends a lot on where is the technology um, level or sophistication of the particular technology that you're trying to advance. What's the technology readiness level? What's the manufacturing readiness level for that? Because you're going to use a different strategy depending on where in that cycle that particular technology is. So for example, if you're looking at something where you're trying to integrate and figure out how you're going to do quantum, that's going to be a very different conversation and a different strategy than if you're doing something like, integration of, you mentioned air conditioning. Air conditioning is a very different kind of situation. So a lot of those are known. It's just a matter of getting those new technologies out, disseminated, integrated, and produced. So depending on the kind of the sophistication and development of that particular segment of technology, which of those strategies is going to be the one you're going to focus on. I think you need to look at both the level of sophistication and which of these strategies is most effective or for that level of sophistication of that technology.
Yeah.
And Mike,
Thanks.
Mike, could you
Please.
expand on that a little bit more, man? On it wouldn't just really depend on the actual region that these clusters are found in, that's what would define your answer? Because it just depends on the
Yes,
industry.
also, I mean, it also
educator.
depends on the degree of sophistication of the assets and of the resources that are in a particular region also. But I mean, if you're looking at it from a 50,000 foot level, you just from the basic kind of initial look at this at a national level, what we're going to be doing, for example, in just to pick something out of the 2022 strategy, like, on-orbit manufacturing is in a very different place than, say, drone manufacturing, just very, very different. You may be using some of the same technologies and some of the same things, but how you would establish the network around that and what you're going to be able to do to move that forward are going to look, quite different because of the sophistication and just the degree of development of that particular sector and what folks have been doing.
Big time, Mike, and that's why we put in our draft, this lingo about this ecosystem of support. Every region's got a different ecosystem of support that needs to be nurtured, and we really need to make a science around that. And that's why we have the Manufacturing Community Ecosystem Metrics Project with so many federal agencies and Argonne and Deloitte and others.
Right.
So hopefully that makes it into it. Yeah.
And it goes back to doing asset maps and understanding who's out there and what capabilities exist out in the ecosystem now and where those are and are those connected or not, because in many cases they aren't. And how could those be connected better or more better? Because a lot of this is you don't want to be creating a whole bunch of silos geographically either. You want to be, this is a national strategy. It's got to be a national initiative. You got to figure out how to, integrate and support those things. And maybe you have different clusters within a particular sector that focus on different things within that sector too,
Yeah. Let me go to Andy Stetner and then I'm sorry, Robert, were you going to say
I
something?
just wanted to jump
Please.
in for a second.
Yeah.
In the chat, Bikash kind of asks a question that goes to the heart of what drove question C. So he asks whether if you focused on critical tech components and technologies, if we would have ripple effects throughout the economy. And that kind of is what's driving the question is, do we drill down on one and move one forward? Or do we do these broader component type approaches on the thought that it'll have a broader effect. And we don't have an answer, and that's really what we're trying to get at.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your comment, Bakash from Reimagine Appalachia. Andy Stetner.
Yeah, I want, now that I understand the question, I want to make, when this current focus on industrial policy happened with the RAMI Act, we tended to focus on, really cutting edge technologies that could move manufacturing forward, less so than on the advanced manufacturing clusters themselves, kind of with an idea that the government's role should still be limited. I would say, we can evolve by that and really focus on these advanced manufacturing clusters and not just limit. For example, with autos, we were focused on lightweight materials. Well, that was one important thing with automobiles, but it's not the only thing. You could imagine a much more robust, industrial policy investment in, in Southeast Michigan or Northeast Ohio around, the auto, sector more broadly. So I think there is more of a space to invest more in advanced manufacturing clusters, and not only around the very specific high technologies in those sectors.
Thank you. Fiona Baxter from North Carolina. Hi, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. So I'm a little adrift from where you are right this moment, because I've had my hand up for a bit. But I really, sort of wanted to encourage us. We talk a lot about, operating vertically, et cetera. But I think the beauty of an ecosystem is that efforts can be integrated and aligned and can meet the readiness level of wherever the manufacturers in that particular region or industry sector are. So I think that I liked the comment earlier about it depends. I think a lot of this really is unique to specific technologies, to specific regions, et cetera. I would like just to take a moment to also say, I get concerned when we talk about these silos, only because right now, for example, I'm PI on a Department of Defense grant, but I'm involved in 5 other large scale grants in different sectors. And we all seem very anxious to say, this technology, we're going to support this technology, and we're going to train, and I'm not making this number up, 5,000 workers in the next 5 years. And that might, but that's 5,000 workers for this particular grant. And I would like to think about, when you talk about prioritizing things, that the federal government has some hand in maybe organizing us in terms of where are all of these people that we're going to train going to come from, and are there skill sets between and among those opportunities that people could be trained, but then it would be relevant for them to enter different sectors of manufacturing moving forward.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
Daniel Weirman, yes.
That was great, Fiona. That hit a nerve with me for sure. And I mean, obviously, all the nonprofits out there that are focused specifically on different population groups are the easy one because they're already set up to try to draw from the general public. But I think that what the federal government can really focus on is a national messaging and marketing towards the general public for these efforts in a big way that's actually re-engaging the general public about these career pathways, because it's a little bit more in the conversation nationally. You hear the president, you hear the cabinet starting talking about manufacturing, but no one knows what that means yet. So I think that you really need to focus, and because it's going to take a long time. You need to refocus into the high school system, into parents, because in 5 years from now, all the kiddos that are 13 are all going to be graduating into these careers. So how are you going to engage with them? What's the 5 to 10 year plan of engaging the youth into these systems that we're setting up now? So marketing messaging for the nation on these careers is really huge. And you guys can do that outside of funding. You guys can take care of that on your own. But that's great, Fiona, because you're right. Where are they all going to come from? Where are we going to fill all these jobs? Well, no one knows that they even exist. So that's a problem. And no one even really understands what jobs are coming. And we need to get that message out.
Yeah, and understanding what's going on, I want to elevate Dean Peckham. He's out from California in the ag land area, making a point about getting that thorough understanding. We've talked in these calls on Mondays for years about, some kind of future hub and spoke type, federal interventions. And we're not sure, to Dean's point, I don't know, Dean, if you want to come on and amplify it, we don't really have a thorough understanding of, of our capabilities. And I think that comment is a good one there. Okay, anything else on this one? 7C, should federal incentives prioritize into industry-specific clusters or tech hubs? Okay, so let's roll to 11. So this gets Robert, if you say a little bit about the past plan, right? Because when I read this question, I think, okay, this is saying, all right, we did these, these priorities. Yeah, set this up a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Sure, happy to do it. So every strategic plan has top level goals. So the 2022 through 2026 strategic plan had 3 top level goals. So they're to develop and implement advanced manufacturing technologies, to grow the advanced manufacturing workforce, and to build resilient manufacturing supply chains and ecosystems. So this question is really asking, as we look forward to the next 4 or 5 years, are those the right goals for us to set? And I would say, as you're thinking about those goals, right, these are the goals first for the federal government and the participating agencies as they especially do their R&D priorities for advanced manufacturing. But truthfully, savvy states and savvy organizations will be looking to this strategy in order to align with what the federal government is planning to do. So again, are those 3 goals, and they're kind of summarized in the parentheses, appropriate for the next few years? Why or why not?
That's a big fat question, and an important one, because if the plan just continues on with those 3 ones and missing things, so you guys are out there to try to help Robert et al. And the federal government and all these agencies not miss the elephant in the room, so to speak. We talked a little bit about 1 there, right? The advanced manufacturing technology is super important. But like we talked about in 7, there's a lot to get people focused around. So producing priority products makes a lot of sense. 2, comments on this one. Is it appropriate? Interesting, I hadn't thought about this, Robert, but it's like appropriate. Sure. Well, who's against those? The question is it sufficient? In my mind, right? Are those goals sufficient? Because it certainly seems, as you saw in our draft comment, where our initial draft is that it's probably not sufficient on their own. But I don't want to, that's kind of my initial thinking, but want to draw that out from stakeholders that we have here. Let's see. Petra Mitchell in Pittsburgh. What do you think on that one?
Sorry, Matt. Yeah, I've been listening. So all good comments here. I do think these are still the right strategies, if that's the question. I mean, that's what we're working on here in southwestern Pennsylvania, helping small and medium-sized manufacturers adopt advanced technologies, primarily AI now. I mean, we're looking at the role of AI in almost all business processes, not just production, which is where it's typically thought of, but there's a big role in all business processes. And I think a lot of manufacturers are really struggling to figure that out. And I think there's a lot of third-party assistance that they need to keep up, with the technology. And then, workforce development, of course, we've all talked about that. There is a tremendous workforce shortage. I agree with the comments about the high school students. I think that's our biggest opportunity, is with our high school students, to provide that career awareness and exploration type of support. And in terms of the federal government, I think there's a big role there with the educational system and somehow aligning the needs of the business community and for national economic security, building on manufacturing, to align that with our educational priorities to provide that career awareness and exploration at an early age. I think that's critically important. And supply chains, of course, if we want to build a domestic supply chain or domestic manufacturing strength, it's all about the supply chains. So I don't know what else more important we have to work on than that. So
Is there anything else you would add to that list, Petra?
well, I like the simplicity of having 3 goals. And in fact, I have my last strategic plan as a kind of a cheat sheet. I look at it quite often, to be honest with you, to make sure we're aligned with what the previous, plan had in mind, and I believe we are. So I like the simplicity of the 3 goals. It's easy to understand, easy to remember. And then, of course, as they did in the past, I'm assuming if you use a similar model, you can then build out the details from there. But I like the simplicity at the top level.
Great, great. I see Fiona's made another comment in the chat. Fiona, did you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, I think that yes, I agree with Petra. We can certainly see these. I mean, these resonate with all of us. I think what concerns me is the fact that it's very easy to roll out a set of goal statements. Well, you know what I'm saying, relatively easy to roll out a set of goal statements. But at the end of the day, what is the impact that we're trying to have? I said in the chat, I'm just a very strong proponent of starting with the end in mind. And I often think that if you can start with those outputs, long-term outcomes, and then impacts, and back in that way, you tend to bring people together more to be collaborating towards accomplishing the same thing. The only other suggestion that I have is, I think that all of this is wonderful, but we have to have a plan for understanding what the priorities are. And I know we've touched upon that, but then how are these things going to be funded? In other words, if we decide that AI is the most important thing since sliced bread, then how are we going to fund the piece that is necessary for workforce development in that arena? How are we going to get the equipment that the manufacturers need that they cannot afford to buy in their hands? And how do we in turn address all of the concerns that are being raised about cybersecurity? So I feel like those 3 sound wonderful, yes, but I think there's a myriad of other things that need to be pulled out of there in terms of sustainability.
Thank you, Fiona. Christian Cowan.
Thanks so much. And I'll start by saying I wholeheartedly agree with Petra and Fiona. Like these are certainly the priorities as they've been for years and need to remain. I would suggest possibly, and at least what we're doing here, I wonder if dual use at some level of the strategy is incorporated. We sit with our federal delegation, and they, have said to us privately and started, publicly, the United States used to be the best at technology, and now there's an argument, not only are we not the best country, but also not as good as Google and Amazon. So the dual use aspect, at the high level, the prime level is super important, but also as we look to really shore up the supply chain, suppliers and tiered suppliers into the DoD and non-DoD, how do you get overlap there and pushing, technology from a physical device standpoint and AI and so forth. So I wonder if there is an intentional dual use strategy that would help kind of broaden the aperture for programs as it goes into both DoD and non-DoD.
Thank you, Christian. Wendy Patton, you made a comment in the chat. Do you want to come on and elevate that?
Thank you. I'm Wendy Patton. I'm with Reimagine Appalachia. I think possibly the elephant in the room here is that there's transition coming at us as a result of AI and changing technology. What will jobs look like? And I think it's incumbent on the federal government to lead a discussion, to lead a response to creating good jobs, jobs of quality, jobs that will create a middle class. we've seen problems in our manufacturing workforce, ranging from simply tiered pay systems through the use of contractors, misclassified workers, temp services, creating jobs of lower quality. I think there needs to be a focus on the labor system from that perspective as well.
Thank you, Wendy. Let's keep these comments, rolling. And again, this is going to be open for a week, so you can keep it through the Slido platform. You can also do it independently through the federal government portal for the all RFI responses. Thought 11B, sorry. So 11B, I guess it's related. I guess we were asking that same question, but we didn't have it up there. I'm sorry. So let's keep that up for a bit. What emerging needs or opportunities might require addition of the new top level goals? We were talking a little bit about that. So we're getting some comments there. Robert, have you guys been kicking around other top level goals?
We're not up to that phase yet. I mean, this is really, we're at the listening phase right now. I would say every time that we do a new strategic plan, we always look at it top to bottom. We don't want to, our predisposition is we don't want to throw out our top level goals, because you don't want to have programs shifting in a big way unless there's a big driver. But at the same time, we always look at it, and the first place we start with is with the input that we get on them. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
We'll
Makes sense. Makes sense. Just thought I'd ask for a little inside knowledge there. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we move then to the other one that we set up here, if that's okay, Aaron. Number 4. 4A talks about examples of, challenges, but I was thinking about 4B, because we don't have a ton of time. We can come back to 4A. How can public-private partnerships be structured to overcome, all of the hurdles about fostering collaboration? I mean, that's what you all have been a part of for 10 years, of trying to co-create some kind of ecosystem of support where we collaborate around how we produce priority products. I guess it's akin to the question that we had, about, sector specific hubs versus generic tech hubs. So maybe this is redundant, but I don't want to assume that. And I want to make sure that I wanted to get this in front of this group here, while we have you, to spur the conversation. We heard at the Manufacturing Momentum Summit, I forget the exact line, David, you might be able to help me. It was federally supported, regionally led, or something. Robert, maybe you remember how somebody presented that. I thought that was a pretty interesting comment last week. And that's what kind of this question is getting at. Do you want to expand more on this question and what you think it means? Robert?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
It's really an open-ended question. We have a number of public-private partnerships, Manufacturing USA, MEP, a number of them from NSF. And I guess the question is, either with those existing ones, or if we were to create new ones, what's the best way to structure them to overcome hurdles and to make collaborations work well or better? And I guess I would say if you have examples of a structure that works well, you could draw on that.
Right. So, long time, folks, we've talked about the MEP system that's been, challenged recently. And so a 50-state MEP, we've got the Manufacturing USA Institutes. We've heard over the years about how those public-private partnerships could be more effective. How, if at all, should they be integrated? What are some big ideas out there? That's what I think is cool about this question. It really opens it up for some big thinking here about really, penetrating into, we have roughly 244,000 existing manufacturers, and we want to spur, some new ones doing cutting edge stuff. How do we engender that? What's the model for doing that? Let's see, some big ideas out there, some small ones.
I'll just hop in, Matt. So just
yeah, please do.
In supporting the public-private partnerships, I think it's just really simple regionally. You have companies that want to hire people. You have educators that want to train people. You have organizations that are set up to support a specific population by finding them and getting them trained and hired. Locally, you just set up little tours, and that's how they should be connected. So you just have to have one entity that's running around herding the chickens to make sure you have a company, an educator, and a nonprofit, and then you align those career seekers and flow them through. So whatever that entity is, it can be a for-profit or a nonprofit, but that's how you connect them all, and you throw in funding to connect them. I don't think it has to be that complicated when you get to a regional ground level. It's very simple. I think nationally is where it gets a little confusing because there's a lot of different directions to go. But as soon as you zoom all the way in, one company, one educator, one nonprofit serving a population, and you just bring people through it. And that's why I think also when you focus in sector based and you focus in very specific, that's where you can get those connections. We need welders. We need CNC operators. We need whatever it is. And now you can align those three entities and then they flow regionally. And then you do that times 10,000 across the country. That's how you grow it nationally. That's just my brain, my little homeschooler brain. So
no, it's great. It's where the rubber meets the road, Daniel. Thank you for that. Phil Singerman, you've had your fingers on a lot of big programs nationally. If you had a whiteboard here, how would you respond to that question? All right. I don't hear Phil. Maybe you're on mute, Phil. I can't hear you.
Matt, it's Petra. While
Oh,
we
hi,
wait
Petra.
for Phil,
Please.
I'd like to just for the record again, I mentioned this in Detroit, so I apologize if I'm a broken record, but I do think that, a major advantage of the MEP program is our reach into every square inch of the United States and providing access to every small manufacturer in this country. And oftentimes a program like MEP is the only connection smaller firms have to the wide array of resources that are available to them, from workforce development to funding to access to government contract, all those kinds of things. In a lot of smaller communities, MEP is the only game in town for them. And so as we talk a lot about tech hubs and regional centers and all that kind of stuff, I understand the need for that, but I hope that there's room to continue the sort of national coverage as well to make sure we can connect all of those smaller firms into the bigger tech hubs or whatever we want to call it, regional centers and so forth. Because I mentioned it before, I see it in Pennsylvania. We have 14,000 manufacturers in Pennsylvania, and they're located all over our state. Yet, the big resources are in Pittsburgh and Philly, and the smaller firms often do get left out. And like I said, the MEPs are often the only ones that can really connect those smaller firms to the bigger picture resources for them. And a lot of those smaller companies are critical. There's one or two, they're very niche markets, very niche products. And without them, something critical for the DoD or medical or all kinds of stuff is occurring, in those firms.
Well said, Petra. Christian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with Petra. I mean, I think the MEP network has got feet on the ground of all these small and medium manufacturers, which is really the heartbeat. We have been ingrained in the sector partnership model. I put some links in the chat here for a while, both kind of a state level and a national level. And and following some of those models of bringing all the right people together in a very programmatic way, not just, sometimes it's more easily said than done, but having a very intentional sector model and the importance of all the voices around the table makes one of the biggest difference in designing the programs from implementation. And again, from an MEP standpoint, the network has got the embedded knowledge of other manufacturers, which is incredibly important. And maybe more important, we have the knowledge of who should be at those tables. So we've been used to kind of help inform, the critical people to bring to those sector partnership model convenings. That next gen sector partnership model that is a good one to reference as we go forward.
Thanks, Christian. Robin Evans, welcome.
Yes, hi, thank you. I had to find my unmute. I'm also from an MEP center. I'm here in Texas. So I want to speak to one of the partnerships we've talked a lot about on this call about marketing and messaging and reaching high schoolers and middle schoolers and administrators. One of the things that we do here is really try and bring those people to the table. And we're a part of marketing and messaging to high schools and middle schoolers to try and tell them about careers in manufacturing. That's one of the things we do. We are out teaching, we're out as part of universities, we're a part of bringing those kids to the table. Manufacturing Day, which is a requirement from NIST, is a big deal for us. Some of our regions, we're an 8-region state because we're big. I don't know if you know that about Texas, but we're big here. And so we have some regions that do middle schoolers. We're doing high schoolers this year, bringing in STEM academies, having those conversations, partnering with like Toolkit Technologies, partnering with people who have interesting and exciting ways to get kids interested in manufacturing careers. And I think that's one way that the MEP Center is an excellent public-private partnership, because we are doing that messaging, trying to reach the next generation of future manufacturers.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. And that's one of the things, you talk about structures in this question, Robert, we're talking in our draft about, how do we communicate? How do we really penetrate deeply into our educational system early on? Manufacturing core could be a big idea there, and so many other things. Please give your feedback here through Slido independently. Those are the priority questions we started with, but we can now draw back and go to all of the other questions or some of the others that you guys care about. If you're looking at the list of 12 questions, we have 25 more minutes, and we can key in on some of those. Aaron Rushing at NIST is quite capable with the Slido platform, I've seen, and so we can hop around, I presume, if that's cool, Aaron. Robert, you can take this in any direction you want to go. I mean, I have some of these other questions teed up. I thought.
Sure. You know what? Let's go ahead and go back to question 1B. And actually, I'm going to just ask, there are a lot of really good comments that I'm seeing coming in the chat, and we're going to definitely try to download those at the end. But if you have access to Slido, can you please put the comments into Slido? It works a little bit better because we can align the answers with the questions, and it's more straightforward. So better to use Slido, but if you don't have access, please go ahead and keep doing it in the chat. So yeah, question 1B is up there, and look at that, someone's already answered part of it. Great. What are the primary challenges and barriers that need to be addressed to ensure the successful integration and widespread adoption of emerging technology in manufacturing? So basically, what do we have to do to get technology into use in manufacturing? And we're really talking leading edge new technology here?
So lots of things, right? Of course, we talk about the big six elements of a thriving regional manufacturing ecosystem of support. They all, in one way, address challenges and barriers, right? From workforce and development, like that comment, the good comment there about a major challenge there, to supply chain support, to research, innovation, entrepreneurship, and all the other elements of the big six. So yeah, so kind of one question back to you, Robert, on this one. This is kind of set up as if they're individual challenges as opposed to systems challenges. You know what I'm getting at? It's like, we could pull something out of the system dysfunction and go, oh, that's a challenge. But in doing so, we're not addressing the systemic challenges. I mean, we have to do both, right? So can you speak to that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I can see both ways of looking at it. So, one is to say individually, what are the bottlenecks here, right? What are the barriers? What are the bottlenecks? What do we need to knock down? And then the second is, what's the systems approach to that, right? How do we handle a bunch of them together? And I would say for this question, other questions deal with how might you develop a whole program, but for this question, if you're going to do the systems approach, link up those components. Like, what are the elements of the system that you need to address to move things forward?
Yeah. So this community is very familiar with those IMCP 6 components. Not that they're the end all be all, but they're a lot more, comprehensive, I think, to most approaches in terms of trying to strengthen the system and the individual component parts of it. I mean, I would like to highlight something that somebody put in the chat already about primary challenges is it's the lack of information into the component parts of those challenges, those big six elements. So if we don't, so much of the information is held by siloed federal agencies that would reveal insights into those challenges and barriers. And those aren't easily accessible in an integrated fashion on a regional level. And so that's our manufacturing community ecosystem metrics project with NIST is trying to get at that, and many federal other agencies. But that's a major challenge, is using the information we already have more productively to reveal those challenges and barriers so that we can do the kind of gap assessment and then more strategic interventions to ameliorate those gaps. But this is for you guys. I mean, we're going to keep talking about that and this question, but this is an opportunity for you guys to chime in to individual barriers, any minor barriers. I want to highlight Daniel Weirman, is out there in the trenches doing workforce work and has not been a part of this, big policy, discussion. But those individual comments like yours, Daniel, are super important. It's where the rubber meets the road. So Wendy, you had a downstream comment about low-tech supply chain barriers. You want to amplify that?
Thank you. We find in bioplastics a major supply chain barrier to the chemical valley, the petrochemical valley in the Ohio River Valley. Is it's low tech. It's a lack of processor for people who want to produce the kinds of bio feedstock that works well in biomedical and agricultural bioplastics. So there can be, this is why I see, the lack of processors for various kinds of biofeedstocks. It's a lack of very low-tech stuff, processors, that is a barrier, a major barrier to the kind of value-added production that we need in the Ohio River Valley. So this, I guess, speaks to the need for sort of vertically integrated focus in which you may be like, okay, the high-tech product at this end is a high value added product that's going to create a lot of really great jobs. What's the barrier? It's something real low tech, way down in the supply chain, and that has a regional focus that the MEPs uniquely know. It's not, I mean, it can be a national problem, but it can be a very local problem as well.
Thank you. Let me call out Larry Peterson on this one in Texas. Larry, you've done a lot of good hard work, overcoming barriers in Austin and Texas writ large, and it's not easy, right? What insights do you have in response to this question? I'm wondering. Yeah.
Well, I will just mention something quickly, going back to another question. Our foundation with a lot of allies are working on developing those kind of public-private structures around solving these big problems using, essentially mostly privately funded areas of innovation. It's not specific to manufacturing, but, when you are trying to address these problems, the depth comes the economic returns come from depth of advantage, not breadth. So being able to concentrate the research and the industry and the most sophisticated customers together can generate an economic feedback loop. And, in the US, we have a tendency to focus on the social dimension of making sure we spread the financing around, which is important. I mean, social dimension is not inconsiderable. But if you're talking about economic challenges, sometimes you have to be cognizant of that. So, generally, when we get to this question about what are the primary challenges and barriers, I mean, it's a matter of as an entrepreneur, it's a matter of what are the incentives to the company C-suite to adopt these emerging technology and manufacturing. At some point, they don't believe the incentives are strong enough. That is, the challenges to getting to greater profitability, or they don't see the profitability. But if it's there, it's like it is too expensive. It is too difficult to implement. Our customers aren't demanding it. There's a lot of ways that you can improve the incentives or reduce the barriers, but you really have to know, what do they see are the trade-offs between their incentives versus what you're trying to accomplish. Just getting back to the areas of innovation, generally speaking, we're doing a presentation at the next AURP conference in November for how to, concentrate these innovative advantages so that you see you can combine the needs of a region for economic growth, a university for research funding and opportunities for students and corporate partnerships, and of course, industry competitiveness and advantage. By doing that, you create opportunities for investors to participate in developing that sort of infrastructure. We haven't really done that sort of combination routinely in the US. You are seeing those kind of things happen around the world, particularly in Asian economies, but a lot of places in Europe as well. And so it's a matter of, if you create the depth of competitiveness, you can do it with private sector funding. You don't need to subsidize with federal funding, what we do in Austin or what happens in Silicon Valley or Boston, but it is how do you create that sort of dynamic so that your incentives are crafted to generate some sort of outcome that no longer needs that incentive on a permanent basis.
Larry, I thought I like your comment. It's got a lot of depth to it. I want to drill down a little bit by switching over to question 9B. And can you extend on that? So 9B, as we go to it, is how can federal agencies assist? It says these companies, from the prior question, that refers to small and mediums, in adopting new technologies and participating in the establishment of robust and resilient domestic manufacturing supply chains. So can you connect what you just said specifically to small and mediums? And we'll use that as a way of getting into this question.
Yeah, so I mean, there are obviously several parts to this problem, but in the end, it is, the folks that own or run those companies that make the decisions. So, understanding exactly what they feel their barriers to adopting those technologies. If we feel as a country, in terms of policy, we want them to adopt particular new technologies or strategies or methodologies, some of them may say, well, for my particular business, that's not going to help. Or I would like to, but I don't have the understanding. Or I would like to, but the return for that is too low. Or other sorts of things. Maybe there is information they require. I would say that MEP, this is supposed to be MEP's responsibility. There are a lot of places where the MEPs are doing, lean manufacturing training, but not getting into the further details. The Ag Extension Program is the most successful tech transfer program we've had in history, going back to when we couldn't even feed ourselves as a nation to being one of the nation's or world's largest exporters. I think some reinvigoration of what the MEP does at large, but also in net, the programs and education and outreach is not going to work unless it really resonates with how those small businesses feel their incentives are arranged to actually adopt new technologies.
Okay, thank you. So other thoughts on the more general question here, and this is about helping small and mediums adopt technologies in order to establish a robust, resilient domestic supply chain.
Can I comment, Robert?
Phil, happy to hear from you.
So, first of all, congratulations. You and your team are doing a terrific job in advancing the national strategy.
Thank you.
And my few comments will be of no surprise and not very creative, but it's important to make sure that in order to advance the strategy that you are developing, we need to have in place mechanisms that effectively and have demonstrated the ability to implement such national priorities. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention the Manufacturing Institute Network program, which you oversee, as well as the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which is a cousin to you at NIST. Both programs need to be supported, both in terms of their authorizations, their appropriations, and their effective implementation by the administrations. I know these are difficult times for NIST in order to advance those specific mechanisms, but I think it's as part of your feedback, it's important for you to hear, and I'm sure others on this call would also endorse those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Does anyone want to build on Phil's comments?
Well, heck, yes, I will, Robert. Thanks for being on offense on this, right? I mean, this is, people are intimidated by the scope of the challenge. That's one thing that I would share, I mean, we've been doing things a certain way in the 21st century that's very akin to the 20th century, and we're not keeping up, and our muscles of collaboration are really weak. And we've got to build those muscles, which of course depends on trust and good information, evidence-based ideas. I mean, Americans are good innovators, but we really haven't done big innovations in a while. And I think now maybe the time to really get some of those into the national strategy because you know, the good hard work that has been happening for years is good and it's hard, but if it's not tethered to a systemic progress approach, you know, it's going to be insufficient, and we're going to have to try some stuff. You know, I mean, just doing the same thing is not gonna cut it, and so. And we got to take advantage of what we already have, and I think this is where I would be echoing Phil's point there, right? It's the MEP system, the institutes, all of that is a good start to what ought to be a much bigger and robust, you know, public-private effort that penetrates deep into American communities, so that everybody's on board with this journey. I think a manufacturing core, you know, with national service would be a big shot across the bow to do that, as would a forcing function of getting all of the various federal agency interventions that land from different agencies into a region somehow working together, right? So I was in the federal government, of course, and federal agencies are encouraged to work with other federal agencies, but there's really not a forcing function that makes that happen. And, you know, that's a big, you know, legislative, I would say, need, you know, to get there. But we got to start talking about it, or else it's not going to happen. And there's got to be feedback that informs that. And I think that's one of the draft comments that we're trying to engender, you know, based on all of the good stakeholder feedback we've had for a decade through the IMCP and the AMCC process, and all these other cool, you know, single agency bottom up interventions like the Tech Hub program, or like the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, like the Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program, which is a no brainer. That's an example of, you know, one of those efforts that's not getting re-upped yet. Hopefully it will be, but it's an example of, with just a little bit of money, boy, we can do a lot. And, you know, to Larry's point, it can't be the end all be all, but it can certainly be a forcing function for focus for regional stakeholders who are intimidated by the scope of the challenge, to say, oh God, the feds are in on this, and they're laying out a framework. They're trying to do better, honestly, you know, with a lot of hitches in their giddy up. That's okay to be straightforward about the challenges we face. I think that's one of the important pieces of making progress. So anyway, I went a little long on echoing Phil's comments, but there was dead air, and so I wanted to fill it, Robert. Yeah.
Well, you know what? So David and Daniel both made related comments in the chats about small and mediums needing time to learn and time to figure out how to make a profit. And I'm wondering if one of them or someone else wants to build on that, but focus it back to how can federal agencies help? And if either of them wants to jump in, that's great.
I don't know how this exactly relates, but I know when federal dollars start trickling down, oftentimes they get bottlenecked into very specific things. And I know that Robert, you weren't really specifically asking about funding, but a lot of the times when you're implementing new technologies and it's hitting the school systems to build out the training centers for these new technologies, it gets bottlenecked into weird and oddly specific things that hinders the building. So when it finally all the way goes down to like a nonprofit, you get a very specific DEI-based hiring mechanism to where the general public actually can't come in. You have to be very specific to how much money are they making, or are they this type of person or that type of person. This is what's going to hinder the national model in general. And the same thing applies to the education, and the same thing applies to the company. I think, broadly speaking, the federal government needs to release the funds in a broad way. I think that we've hyper-focused it so much sometimes that it hinders the growing of these technologies, or it hinders the workforce coming into it. And you can't be inclusive to everybody. And so it really hinders us on the boots on the ground. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah, no, I thought that was very clear.
Robert, this is Phil Singerman again. Can I add to that?
Please.
So, although I don't think it's been mentioned, but consistent with these comments, the SBIR program, which is authorized and appropriated, and it provides funding for innovative small companies, which overlaps with but is not coterminous with many of the companies that this community works with, is a very valuable program. And NIST in particular has pioneered recently with the CHIPS Act funding mechanisms that are really quite robust and creative. So I would encourage you, and we'll put comments into the chat. I would encourage you to also look at the SBIR program as a mechanism for building the supply chains for technologies of the future.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Great
Thanks, Phil. We only have a couple of minutes left, Robert. So I'm thinking we should probably summarize the mechanisms for feedback. So let's review. We have this Slido platform that's going to be open for a week, right? We have, and we can put this out, right? We can take the Slido platform and put it out with our to our community. Right. Okay. So there's that. And then there's just the regular RFI response platform. Are you guys, so those are two ways. Are there other opportunities that you know about going forward where people can submit comments?
Those are the primary ways, right? The RFI and Aaron put the QR code for it up on the screen or through this Slido. We also are having some additional events, and you may see announcements for those. We're not posting a list of events. We're doing it kind of like this, going to individual existing groups. But you can also come to meetings like this. But yeah, those are
Awesome.
the ways, and we're getting great comments. And I've got to say, this was a really good discussion that we've had here. So thank you.
Well, great. I thank you, Robert and Saeed, Jahangir, and Aaron Rushing, the whole NIST team. We appreciate the teamwork, the AMCC community. David Van Sicklen, our operations director, dropped the link again to the RFI in the chat. So you can just grab that and take your time. Remember, you don't have to answer all the questions or whatever. And the question 12 is this big open-ended one. So you can just make whatever comments you want. And we really appreciate, as always, on every Monday call, your teamwork. Look forward to further information in the AMCC update on this Friday. And thank you again, Robert and this team. And thank you all for attending and giving us your best take. Have a great week.
Thank you.